Napoleon Bonaparte, one of the greatest emperors in European history, a man who changed the balance of power across the continent. With extraordinary military talent and boundless ambition, Napoleon left a profound mark on the hearts of the French people and the world. He was not only a brilliant strategist, but also a symbol of strength and national pride. After his defeat at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, Napoleon was exiled to Saint Helena, a remote British colony in the South Atlantic. There, he spent his final years in isolation and passed away on May 5, 1821. It seemed that his story had ended there, but his remains became the focal point of an intense rivalry between two great powers, France and Britain. Napoleon's remains were not just those of an emperor, they were a symbol of strength, pride, and unity for an entire nation. Therefore, bringing his remains back to his homeland was not just an act of remembrance, but a declaration of honor and national status. Let us delve into the dramatic story of the race for Napoleon's remains, a symbol of power for both France and Britain. To understand why Napoleon's remains became a symbol of power between France and Britain, we need to look back at the turbulent historical context of early 19th century Europe. Napoleon Bonaparte once led one of the most powerful empires in Europe. With glorious victories in battles such as Austerlitz and Jena, he expanded France's territory and placed much of Europe under his control. However, his limitless ambition also created many powerful enemies, particularly Britain, a nation determined to resist his dominance. The Battle of Waterloo in 1815 marked the end of Napoleon's empire. Defeated by the British and Prussian forces under the command of the Duke of Wellington, Napoleon was forced to abdicate for the second time. This time, the British gave him no chance of return. They exiled him to Saint Helena, a remote island far from the outside world. But to the French, Napoleon remained a hero. Throughout his years in exile, public sentiment in France continuously called for his return. However, the British saw him as a symbol of threat. Keeping his remains at Saint Helena was their way of asserting victory and preventing any efforts to idolize him in the hearts of the French people. Nearly 20 years after Napoleon's death, Europe's political landscape had changed. King Louis-Philippe of France, eager to solidify public support and assert his own status, made a bold decision to bring Napoleon's remains back to France. But to do so, he had to overcome lingering opposition from Britain. This marked the beginning of a complex and tense diplomatic negotiation, where both sides understood that Napoleon's remains were not just a body, they were a symbol of national power. Why would a mere mortal remain become so profoundly significant? For the French people, the remains of Napoleon Bonaparte are far more than just bones laid to rest. They represent the very soul of a nation, a symbol of past glory, and a testament to powerful leadership. Napoleon was not merely a military genius or a statesman, he embodied the spirit of France during one of its most triumphant and tumultuous periods. To bring him home was not just an act of reverence, but a bold declaration: France has never forgotten its great emperor. In the early 19th century, Napoleon's victories had elevated France to unprecedented heights. Battles such as Austerlitz and Jena were not just military triumphs, they were national pride crystallized. Under his rule, France stood as a dominant force in Europe, challenging old monarchies and reshaping the continent. For many, Napoleon was not just a leader, he was the personification of France's ambition and resilience. When he was exiled to Saint Helena and eventually passed away in isolation, it felt as though the heart of the nation had been torn away. For 2 decades after his death, the call to bring Napoleon home resonated deeply with the French people. His remains represented more than a body, they were a living memory of a golden era. As long as he remained in foreign soil, it was as though France itself remained defeated. His tomb in Saint Helena was a reminder of a fallen empire, a wound that time had not healed. Repatriating his remains became a national mission to reclaim not just a body but a sense of honor and unity. However, for the British, Napoleon's remains symbolized something entirely different: the finality of their victory. Keeping him on Saint Helena was a way of asserting dominance, a message that the great conqueror would never rise again. To allow his remains to return to France was to risk reigniting the fervor and hero worship that Napoleon inspired. It was not just about bones, it was about power, memory, and control. When King Louis-Philippe finally secured the return of Napoleon's remains in 1840, it was a moment of national catharsis. The voyage of La Belle Poule, the ship tasked with bringing him home, was followed with great anticipation. As the ship arrived in France and made its way to Paris, crowds lined the streets, weeping, cheering, and paying their respects. It was not merely a funeral procession, it was a moment of collective identity. Napoleon's final resting place at Les Invalides stands today as a monument to this profound sense of national pride. It is more than an ornate tomb, it is a reminder that a nation's spirit cannot be exiled or buried. The act of bringing him home was not just about honoring a leader, it was about reaffirming France's undying pride and resilience. In death, as in life, Napoleon remains a symbol of what France once was and what it aspires to be. Finally, after intense negotiations, the British agreed to allow Napoleon's remains to return to France. In 1840, the warship La Belle Poule was sent to Saint Helena to carry out this historic mission. This was not just a simple homecoming, it was a highly symbolic political and diplomatic event. The journey of La Belle Poule was closely followed by both nations. When Napoleon's remains arrived in France, thousands of people lined the streets to welcome the emperor home. Crowds stretched along the streets of Paris, expressing deep reverence. For the French, this was a historic moment that reaffirmed national pride and honor. Napoleon's remains were laid to rest at Les Invalides, a magnificent monument in the heart of Paris. His tomb was built with grandeur, reflecting the highest respect. His return was not just a revival of memory but a declaration that despite his defeat, Napoleon's spirit would live on in the hearts of the French people. The return of Napoleon's remains was not only a historical event but also a symbol of national pride. It demonstrated that even in defeat, a leader could live on in the hearts of the people. For France, Napoleon was a hero, a symbol of strength and aspiration. For the world, the story of his homecoming is proof that history is written not only through victories but also through memory and pride. This event also raises questions about how we remember and honor historical figures. It serves as a reminder that a person's strength lies not only in what they achieve in life but also in how they are remembered after they are gone. The race for Napoleon's remains was not just a simple historical event, it was a story of honor, pride, and symbolic power. Napoleon, whether in defeat or after his death, left an indelible mark on history. In this way, he was not just an emperor but a legend who continues to live on in history.